It's Wednesday. It's 12 o'clock, 11:30 in most of Labrador. This is The Signal. I am Andrew Hawthorne. I'm in for Adam Walsh today. Today on the show, we're doing something of a cross-campus checkup. It's been a rocky couple of years for our province's venerable post-secondaries between funding cuts, crumbling infrastructure, and now federal enrollment caps on international students. We're going to be talking to some student leaders to see what's up, what's down, and how to fix all of that. Joining me here in the studio are Canadian Federation of Students Chair Mary Feltham. Hello, Mary.
Hi, thanks for having me here.
Thanks for coming. MUNSU Director of External Affairs, Nick Keogh. Hello, Nicholas.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Muse Editor-in-Chief, John Harris. Hello.
Hi, Andrew. How's it going?
I'm doing swell. How are you doing today, John?
Doing great.
Sick. And Muse Managing Editor as well, because you guys just couldn't send one guy, hey? MUNSU only sent one guy. Are you intimidated by this?
I had to tag along. I'm sorry.
Jake Leibold right here. We're going to be reaching out to some colleagues from Grenfell as well shortly. And really, this is just taking the temperature, what's going on campus. A lot of things are going on campus, really. MUN universities in general have been major headlines throughout the country over the last year and a half. MUN particularly has been making some national headlines. And so I just wanted to go around the horn. Jake, we can start with you. Like, what are the biggest issue, or what is the biggest issue, would you say, that is weighing on students in the province here today?
I mean, I think John might probably agree with this, but I feel like cost of living is like a huge issue. Everyone I know is talking about groceries right now, and I feel like it wasn't nearly this bad when I first got here in 2017. Like, because I'm a grad student now, but like just the way that the pre-pandemic conditions and the post-pandemic conditions have like really amplified how difficult it is to be a young person. Like it's just gotten worse. You know what I mean? Like I feel like all those expenses have magnified, and I don't know.
What do you think, John? Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think that the big thing at MUN right now is students don't really feel like they're being heard by administration. I think that when it comes to I think the biggest conversation topic is the crumbling infrastructure. Like I think you can only go so far walking down the halls without hearing somebody complain about the munnels or buckets of leaks.
Complain that they've been hit by a piece of the munnels.
Yeah, well, there was a video posted recently. I'm not sure.
MUNSU posted this. I'm sure Nick will talk about it more, but a whole ceiling tile fell down in a social work classroom during an exam. So that's a big topic of conversation. I think it becomes. It kind of hurts people's confidence in the university, and in terms of when it's also about the tuition question. Like I think we did a fun kind of style interview downtown on George Street actually, and it was, what is your hot take about MUN? A lot of people were saying the asbestos, the crumbling infrastructure, and some complaints about residents, as there always are. But there's a real sense that we're paying twice as much of tuition, and there's still a crumbling infrastructure around us. I think that's that students don't feel like they're getting a good deal with the price they're paying for tuition.
It's interesting because, it shows that a campus is really a country in microcosm, right? Like, cost of living affects everybody, and the things that you're talking about are the same things a lot of people are saying, in that costs are going up, but the amount of money coming in to pay for those costs, whether it's at a university through funding or through, grants or loans, or through your salary, is not going up to meet all those rising costs. And something's got to give. And in this case, maybe it's part of the infrastructure literally falling apart around you. Woof. Nicholas Keogh, what do you think the biggest issue? And they already took cost of living. You can say that too, but.
I would say funding cuts as a whole, because I think that impacts cost of living. I think that impacts the infrastructure, and it impacts tuition fee prices. We've seen an over 46% cut to Memorial University over the past 11 years, and I think that's definitely the biggest issue. As much as there are huge issues with administration and the way that they govern, There are also huge issues with the amount of money that they're being given to govern the university. They've lost almost half their funding in the last 11 years. So I think we really see that being brought down onto students and faculty and staff and everybody in the university community.
Would you generally say that the administration, and I know, MUNSU administration often at loggerheads on things, would you say that they're trying to, by and large, make the best of a bad situation with this hand that they've been dealt with all these cuts? Do you think that they're handling a lot of these cuts in a halfway decent way, or is there substantially other things that they could be doing?
I definitely think there's administrative bloat. I definitely think that there's misspending, but I think that there's a lot more the provincial government could do as well to make sure that the issues with governance at the university are not falling onto the backs of students, because currently they are. We could be having specific grants coming to tuition, specific grants for infrastructure, but we're not seeing that. We're just seeing a cut in the overall grant. We're seeing a cut in the tuition offset grant. I think that yes, the university could absolutely be managing money better. I think the university has a lot of work to do in that regard, but the provincial government also has a lot of work to do to make sure that the people who are bearing the brunt of that aren't the students and the other members of the university community.
All are punished, hey?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I learned that at Mud English. That's a Shakespeare. Mary, you're at the front line of a few of these things. What do you think the biggest issue weighing on students is?
Yeah, it's really hard to pin it down to one issue, but I think a lot of it does relate to the fact that there's such a blatant disregard to student needs. And people think, or I should say, political leaders often think, oh, it's just students, but it's not just student issues. Everyone is impacted by the cost of living and by not having accessible education, because then there's less folks going into the workforce to help with the healthcare. Just for example, like my graduating class for nursing only had 5 students. So it's just really frustrating to see the lack of accountability from administrators and government officials in creating policies to actually rectify the issue and try and place blame on marginalized groups by saying, oh, international students are the issue for the housing crisis, which we know is not the case. We need to see more tangible efforts made by leaders by listening to the students, because we've been saying for decades that there's a problem, that we need education to be prioritized. We need the cost of living to be readdressed. We need you to look at housing and make sure that it's safe and accessible for all, and we don't see that presently.
In addition to being with CFSNL, you are a nursing student, correct?
I'm actually graduated.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I am a student again. I'm learning French, but I graduated in 2023 from nursing, yeah.
So as a nursing recent graduate and still a student, you're kind of at the forefront of 2 of the major crises, perhaps, that are facing us. How you doing? You doing okay?
Well, that's such a valid question. We're surviving out here, but hardly. It's actually convenient timing for this because the RNUNL convention is happening now, and we're discussing a lot about how nurses are also not given the respect they deserve, and how there's a lot of pressure on nurses because we're dealing with short staff, not proper pay. And then we see our nursing students who are not getting paid at all coming in to do their work terms. So it's making it really challenging for us to recruit nurses when you're learning and you're basically being used to do the labor with no compensation whatsoever, and people can't afford to stay in nursing then. So people often drop out because they have no way to survive, which is impacting all of us.
You're seeing a lot of the nursing students drop out. They just can't even get through it.
Yeah. I mean, I did the accelerated class. Half of my class did drop out.
Half the class.
Which was, I mean, we were a small class to begin with. We had 10. We graduated with 5. The non-accelerated class, I think, had 30. They lost about 10%, I believe, of their class as well.
And I'll ask you the hot button topic for all graduates. Did those 5 get offered positions in the province?
technically, no. I could only work part-time because as I am like the Canadian Federation of Students for Newfoundland and Labrador chairperson, I said I still want to do nursing. I want to commit and help, but I can only do part-time. And they said, try again next year. And I said, absolutely not. You're hiring me now.
Wow.
So it took them 8 months to hire me because I would only work part-time.
I wanted to go back to something you just said too, which is that people aren't listening to students on whatever level, perhaps the administration, perhaps like the government. I know MUNSU has several times been trying to meet with the premier, and different protests happening on campus have tried to meet with the premier to no avail. Why are people not paying attention to students? Like especially at MUN, at CNA, these places are kind of the locus of a lot of problems, the problems that the province is having. Why do you think people don't want to listen to students? Nick, what's your experience with people not wanting to listen to you?
I think that if the premier were to agree to sit down and have a meeting with us, then he would be pressured to make the right decision and increase funding to the university. And I don't think that he wants to do that. I think he wants to continue to run away from the issue. And so I think that's a large reason why he doesn't want to. It's definitely really concerning because, as you said, we have been trying to get this meeting for a while. And it's been over a year and a half since the premier committed to listening to all sides, to the situation, to look at tuition freeze funding, and to not see any response. We haven't gotten a single response from him, not an email saying no, nothing.
Does that carry through to general issues? Like, is that more than one issue? You're just not getting a response?
Absolutely, yeah.
It just seems strange that, like, no matter what the issue, I could understand like a hot button topic or something that you don't want to, but very little response anywhere.
Yeah.
John, why do you think that is? As a news organization on campus, are you taken seriously with what you're writing about these issues? Do you hear back from people when you pose these questions and highlight these issues on campus?
Yeah, sorry. I think that there's a big disconnect between students and those who are making decisions. I think that on the nursing student issue, when I was covering that this past week, there's a real kind of disconnect between students on Center for Nursing Studies on Forest Road campus and what the NL Health Services are saying and what the Minister of Health is saying, because when I went and talked to the students at Center for Nursing Center for Nursing Studies, they said, no one's been in here to talk to us from the NLHS this year, no one from the Ministry of Health. We're totally in the dark here about what are our opportunities, and we're feeling like we were told in the beginning of COVID, when we started our degrees, that we were going to have jobs no matter what. And now that we're going toward the end of it, we're not sure if we're going to get a permanent job, if we're going to get a temporary job, if we're going to get part-time work or casual work. And you see this over-reliance on travel nurses, especially in the rural areas, where you have nursing students really worried and concerned about what their future is in the province at a time when we have 600 vacancies for nursing. And so what happens is you have this total disconnect where the NL Health Services may be thinking, okay, well, we'll definitely have jobs for all these folks, but there's not really there on the, visiting in the classrooms, talking, being communicative, one-on-one with the students. So I do think that there needs to be a lot more willingness to meet with students. I think that that's what we're seeing in the case of MUNSU, but not only MUNSU, the whole campus coalition that represents over 10,000 or over 15,000 students and faculty and staff at the university are looking to meet with the premier. And when you have a huge coalition of entire workers and students from the only public university asking to meet with the premier, it seems a bit it seems a bit strange to me as well that there's not a follow through on that. So I would love to see a more. I think as a news organization, I think we're taken seriously and we're at the table and we're reporting on things. I think that there should be more of a connection between, that's what we try to do at the Muse, is try to connect people and make sure people are aware of issues. I think there needs to be more of a connection between students on the ground and the decision makers.
Just to, I don't want to focus only on nursing as a student issue, but just a little more focus on nursing. Just the law of economics, supply and demand would seem to think that we are in so demand of nurses, and here's some nurses, so why aren't those? Where is the disconnect that simple economics isn't kicking in here and being like, well, we need nurses, so nurses are in demand, and here's the nurses. Let's demand them. Why is that not happening?
That's such a good question. I think some of it is in the hiring process of people are scared that if you are not full-time, then you're not going to be working. But like I said, I am part-time, but I certainly work far more than part-time hours. And even the casual employees that I know work fairly often. So I think it's very much like at face value of we need full-time nurses, so we're only looking for full-time nurses. And I think they assume that we are going to be reaching out, but it's challenging. I would love to see more community consultation because especially with nursing, holistic care, communication, this is what we need to do. So it needs to be done at all levels, including training and hiring us. Complex.
Could I say something about that too?
Of course.
I noticed they recently, I believe it was in the past few months, they standardized the travel nursing rates. And I think, I don't know, my father's a nurse in Nova Scotia, and I remember talking to him about it. And I think it angered a lot of people from like unions in nursing. And I think that kind of relates to what you're saying about the lack of like consultation in the community. And I think, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents.
Sure.
Yeah, I think from the press conference that NLHS held with last Tuesday with Minister Hogan as well, they did say we're gonna have job offers for all these students. I just don't think that was, that had not been communicated throughout the fall. And I think that bridging that gap is super important because nursing students are seeing these articles in the news about the overuse of travel nurses and how abundant they are. There's about 340 private agency nurses now. And they're looking at these numbers and thinking, well, is there going to be a spot for me? So this kind of, and they've also, committed to reducing that number to pre-pandemic levels by 2026. So there does seem like there is a suggestion that they're trying to fix this issue, but there's some blatant kind of headlines that are coming out about how the travel nurses are being offered apartments by managers. By
the people hiring the travel
so
nurses.
It just seems like we're not really sending the best message to our future nursing students. After doing 1,700 hours of clinical placements for free, they're really burnt out before they even get to join the workforce.
Yikes. The nursing thing is an entire episode on its own, and I could get sucked into it right now. But let's talk about some other student issues as well. We talked already about the crumbling infrastructure, particularly here in St. John's on MUN's campus. Nicholas, can you talk a bit about the MUN infrastructure deficit? What is that? Why is that happening?
Yeah, it again comes down to lack of government funding. So there's a $481 million deficit right now in terms of deferred maintenance. So obviously that is a huge amount. We don't see very much. We don't see more than $10 million per year from the provincial government to deal with maintenance. So, I mean, you can do the math. That'll take decades to fix if nothing got worse from what it is right now, which it obviously will. Everything deteriorates. But I think it does kind of speak to how government and the university administrations are not working together to actually solve the problems that impact people in the university. It's a huge concern. It's a concern that students bring up to me all the time. I get so many messages. I get so many emails about the crumbling infrastructure. It's something that we really felt like we had to take on this year because it is humiliating, honestly, to be at this university and there's people coming in from all different countries and all different provinces, and to see our only public university look like this and be literally falling apart, and it doesn't seem as though anyone wants to do anything about it. It is really humiliating as a Newfoundlander.
Humiliating as a Newfoundlander. Why, do you think there is that connection between Memorial and Newfoundland itself still?
Absolutely.
It is a memorial, after all.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we can't separate Memorial University from its mission, which was to provide education for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians and to provide education for students as a whole, to make sure that education is accessible to specifically a population that was often deprived of education. So it's really important that we don't veer from that mission. And I feel as though over the last 11 years with these funding cuts, we're veering really far away from that mission of making sure that education is seen as a public good and making sure that education is accessible for everyone who wants to pursue it.
Can you talk a bit about the Fund MUN campaign? What is that?
So Fund MUN campaign, it's been in the works for over a year, I'd say. But since I've been in the role, we've been working with the Campus Coalition, which is a coalition of every single union on campus. So that's all 4 student unions, as well as the Faculty Association, the Lecturers Union, the Teaching Assistants Union, several different QP locals and NAPE locals. So it also includes maintenance staff. It includes literally everyone who's unionized at the university, staff, faculty, students. And we have come together to demand that the government reinvest in the university and reinvest in public education as a whole. And it's something that has been working. We've been working towards it for a while. But in September, we did a big launch of the campaign, which includes a website, fundmun.ca, where people can go share their stories, post pictures of the crumbling infrastructure, or share their stories of how funding cuts have impacted them. And then also they can take action with a click-to-email campaign to their MHA and to the Premier and the Minister of Education. And we've been seeing really, really positive feedback from it. We've been seeing a lot of people resonate with it, people who are at MUN right now, but people who are alumni MUN, people who have greatly benefited from having Memorial University and having it be an accessible option for post-secondary education. I think we can see, and it's something that's always brought up in our press conference and everything. We have 66,000 people in this province who are graduates of Memorial University. And to think about what this province would be without that university is really scary. I don't know where we would be as a province if we hadn't had the access to education that we have had. And based on the crumbling infrastructure, it's not looking good for the future of the university. And although crumbling infrastructure is only one aspect of the university, it is really worrying that we're not seeing any investment from the government,
even on that basic level.
Absolutely. There's a facilities condition index that MUN uses, and there's different scales. So 0 to 5 is excellent quality, and 5 to 10 is good, and then 10 plus is fair to poor. And we're currently at 28%. And obviously that's an arbitrary number, but it's looking to go up in the next 10 years to over 40%. And I don't even know what that looks like. That it really honestly scares me as someone who will see this. I don't see how we can have a university.
I'll throw it out to everybody. Are you hearing anything from people outside of MUN about this? Because like you mentioned earlier, there's been several high profile videos that have gone viral of MUN just kind of falling apart from the ceiling coming down. MUN Students for Palestine famously had a whole series when MUN was saying they had to move their tents because it was a safety hazard, of just going around flagging, oh, well, this giant bucket of brackish liquid that's been here for a month might be a safety hazard too. Are people outside the student body aware of these issues? Like you said, there's tens of thousands of people that are graduates of MUN. Are they aware? Do they care about this?
Well, I attended an event the other night hosted by profs of MUN, Dr. Lucian Ashworth and Dr. Vicky Hallett, and it was on it was on commemoration, and it talked about Lucian Ashworth talked about how back after World War I there was a conversation, and it said what the debate was, are we going to have a brass and steel memorial, or are we going to have a living memorial like a university? So the debate went on, and at the end of the day, they decided we're going to have both. We're going to have a living university, a college at the time, Memorial College, which then turned into Memorial University, as we all know. And we're going to have a living university to give a space for young people to learn and choose peace. And then we also decided to have the War Memorial, the National War Memorial, which is on Duckworth Street, and it was recently refurbished. So we were letting one memorial, we're letting one memorial crumble, really, and it's a living memorial, and I think that needs to be taken more seriously. And the idea of having a memorial to World War I, where young people were sent off to die, is now they have a opportunity to get an education here in the province instead of having to go off to Europe. And I think that is being lost right now in the discussion of, I think when Nicholas talks about humiliation and it's about being able to have pride in our university, our province, ourselves. And I think that's really important because I am very proud that we've had a history of education and being able to give education to young people. And it's unfortunate that we've lost that. Additionally, and you bring up MUN Students for Palestine, I think that there's a great irony in a memorial to war being invested in weapons manufacturers. I mean, I think that's, no matter where you stand on politics or whatever position you hold, the great irony of being invested in Raytheon as a university that is dedicated to memorial to war and a tribute to peace. I think that there's really a lot of contradictions that are coming about in this modern era, and that we need to return to our the real purpose of this university. And I think that's being lost, and it's unfortunate. And I think we should be putting the same investment that we've put to refurbish the War Memorial downtown into refurbishing and putting a sense of pride back into the university as well.
Let's talk about MUN Students for Palestine for a bit. MUN has a large history of protest, and I think there's still photos of protesters and the sit-ins in the 60s and 70s up on the walls in there. And obviously that got a lot of attention, like a lot of universities, towards the underside of a university in terms of its investments, like you've been saying. Has that moved at all? Has that moved the needle on the way people think about how a university invests? And has it seen any progress in the goals that they've set out for MUN? The protest has changed several times, and I throw that out to anybody. Nicholas, you could probably talk about this.
Yeah, I think that we've definitely seen Memorial change a little bit. We see a little bit more transparency in terms of their investments. They're now disclosing their direct investments, which is a direct result of these protests that happened in the summer and I guess are continuing to this day. But we haven't seen very much in terms of following through on a lot of the commitments and promises that they've made. So one of the commitments that the university made to MUN Students for Palestine was to work with them on a joint statement. This statement, as far as I am aware, has not been made. There's been no meetings on this statement. Something that really does impact students, bursaries. That's something that was initially promised, scholarships for Palestinian students, bursaries for Palestinian students. And now we see the university claiming, including at convocation, they have claimed publicly several times that there are bursaries in place for Palestinian and Israeli students, but just this week we had to crowdfund a student's tuition who is from Palestine because there are no options available at the university. And this is something that we have been looking into, and it's I don't like to say things are an outright lie often, but it really seems like an outright lie because the financial office doesn't know about it. The internationalization office doesn't know about it. The student support office doesn't know about it. And the administration is continuing to peddle this this statement saying that there are these bursaries available, that these bursaries have been made available. But I think in terms of the overall goals of the protest, I think disclosure was a big win. We were one of the first first universities in the country to disclose investments, but we haven't seen any progress at all in terms of actually divesting, in terms of actually doing anything about these investments. We've seen the university admit that they are funding these weapons manufacturers and these companies that are complicit in war crimes and genocide. But it's really disheartening to see that while they're admitting to it now, they seem to think that they don't need to do anything about it.
Right. And of course, we should mention that Israel vehemently denies accusations of genocide. But even just this week, the Pope has been the latest voice calling for an investigation into that genocide. So it's still a very liquid issue that people are talking about that is affecting students here. John and Jake, you guys have been covering the protests for the longest time. How does it feel compared to other protests that have happened on MUN? What is the progress? And is it continuing?
Yeah, I think back in May, we interviewed organizers with MUN Students for Palestine, and they had talked about a lot of the similar issues. And one thing that's kind of changed is they said that they were cautiously optimistic back in May. Since interviewing them in, I think, October, that's completely changed. They are a lot more cynical about working with the university on trying to get some of that divestment through, I think. But,
yeah, I think if you look at University of King's College divested, it's not, and we're seeing all kinds of reports from the United Nations and special rapporteur to the United Nations warning organizations that are invested in weapons manufacturers involved in Israel's war on Gaza that they may be implicated in the genocide case that's before the International Criminal Court of Justice. And South Africa's case has already had a temporary ruling that said, Israel must stop and do everything it can to prevent genocide. And since then, they've continued their barrage and bombing campaigns with majority deaths being children and women. I think it's a real shame and a stain on the legacy of Memorial that we aren't able to meet this moment, regardless on where you are politically. I think that a university has no place in the investment in weapons manufacturers, especially a university that was dedicated to the end of war and a memorial to those who died in war.
I think it was a surprise to a lot of people to hear, that you never know. Sometimes you buy a package of investments and you're like, oh, where's that money going? And here we are at MUN with this.
I do think it is what the MUN Students for Palestine has brought to the forefront, like many protests do. I think we saw this during the MUNFA strike, but a much higher level of civic engagement in issues that don't normally come to the foreground, like what are our investments in, what is going on with the Board of Regents, how does our government, internal governing structures work, how do they function, what are access to information requests, how do those work? I think that's a really a huge part of the protest is actually, and MUN Students for Palestine has been doing a really good job of bringing this to the forefront, is like these are all these issues that are internal to the university that don't really get paid attention to unless there are issues like this. But they are issues that we should all really be looking at more. And I think the change to the Student Code of Conduct is one as well, where I think that MUNSU could probably speak to that as well. But there's definitely, they have shown no signs of giving up. Last night they had a arts and administration teach-in by Dr. Sarah Martin about food insecurity in Gaza. It's also been an opportunity for learning, for engagement. I've had talks from Dr. Heidi Matthews of the law school I forget the name, law school in Toronto.
I forgive you. I'm not going to hold it against you.
But yeah, I think it's also a really big opportunity for learning and engagement in all kinds of systems and history and politics. Yeah.
We're going to get outside the overpass for a little bit and head over to Grenfell campus. And we have Student Union President Hadiza Bello. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for joining us today, Hadiza. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Can you tell us what issues do you see facing students in Grenfell? Earlier in the program, I kind of went around the table here and said, what is the issue weighing on students? What do you think the issue is weighing on students in Corner Brook?
Well, right now I would say there are two major issues. The first one would be course cuts to the visual arts program here at Groundford campus. And the second, as we all know, is, the rising tuition, which is about to reach its max in 2026 when the 4% increase is done.
Let's talk about the course cuts first. You have been seeing cuts. We've been talking about funding cuts, and those do translate into courses just kind of vanishing sometimes. Tell us about what that situation is for folks that might not be familiar.
Over here at the Groundford campus, the visual arts program already has a limited selection of courses every semester because it is a pretty small program. But only a few days before students had to register, were they told that there would be even lesser courses to choose from this semester or in the winter due to professors taking leave, and they don't have an issue with that. But what was initially communicated to them was that it was because of, reduced budget.
Do you think that's gotten worse because of this, or was that happening all along? It just kind of moves around. I only say this because I very well remember several courses I took at MUN an odd number of decades ago that I won't go into, where the professor just disappeared and or wasn't available, and they had to haul somebody out of retirement. Do you think that this is getting worse?
I wouldn't be able to comment on that directly because the communication students have been receiving were a bit contradictory. So we ourselves are not sure what the issue is.
You just don't know. The professors are not there to be able to teach these courses.
Oh, no, the professors are not at fault. It's the administration.
Yeah.
The budget was supposed to be released in August, but even that was released pretty late. The professors themselves did not know about these course cuts until about 2 weeks before registration. So they're keeping everybody in the dark, and they're just hoping for more clear communication between, everyone that has a stake in this, that's students, faculty, and staff.
Is that translating into a real impact on students that you're seeing? Because obviously students need certain courses to be able to achieve a degree. Are they finding that those courses are being impacted?
Yes, the courses are being impacted. So the fourth year is we already have a limited amount of courses we can take. So people usually plan way ahead in the year because they know the same courses are going to be available, each year, year after year. But because of this, sometimes this year when you have only a 2,000 level course left, one of the courses that you had planned to take, which you had not taken in your 3 years, is what they cut. So then you have to go through the whole process of writing a letter, putting in a form to do a third year course again, to have that be applied to be your 2,000 level course. So they're just putting more strain on students as is with, the increase in cost of living, cost of housing, and the increase in cost of tuition as well. They're not making our lives any easier.
And if I understand it, essentially students are being charged more for less courses. Is that correct?
Yes. That is another thing that they're mad about.
What are you hearing from students on the ground there? How is this affecting their stress levels, their mental health in Corner Brook?
They had a protest last week, Thursday. It was from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. where no visual arts student went to any class, and our professors were in support of this because they were also kept in the dark about the situation. But they're, trying to meet with the dean, the visual arts. Each year has a visual arts rep. So during their meetings with the dean, they try to, advocate for more accountability, more transparency, because at this point, students are frustrated because they've made this decision and it's looking like nothing can be done to, overturn it.
It seems somewhat chaotic. Why do you think even the professors are in the dark about this from day to day?
I think it just has to do with a lack of preparation and a lack of leadership from the upper administration, because the professors would have been the perfect people to have been able to work with upper admin to, be able to hire perk was instructors to take over whatever instructors were going on, whatever leave, sabbatical that they were going to be unavailable for. But even that, that was not the solution that came to mind. The solution to the reduced instructors was to cut courses. They were trying to take the easy way out.
Hadiza, thank you so much for speaking with us today. I'm going to ask everybody in the room here this in a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, why is it you decided to get involved, especially at this chaotic time that you're seeing around you? Why did you decide to get involved as a student leader at Grenfell?
Well, Grenfell campus is a really small campus, so there's lots of groups. And if you aren't involved, you would, feel left out. So I think that's kind of what made me get into the student movement. I used to live off campus, and that made me feel disconnected from the Grenfell community. So once I moved on campus, I tried to find different ways to get involved, volunteering, finding work, and then I found my way to the student union.
And have you found it so far?
It's been good so far. I'm 3 years strong, graduating next year. I like working with people, and we have lots of great people that end up joining council, and everyone is always so motivated in wanting to, advocate for students, wanting to give out information and just be of help to whatever student comes into the office.
It's nice to hear you talk about it positively with all of those pretty major issues weighing on you there. So I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hadiza Bello, Grenfell Campus Student Union President on the line there. Like I said, I'd just like to ask for you folks too. These are a lot of weighty issues that we're talking about. I guess there's always weighty issues weighing on students particularly. Though that said, when I was at MUN, the main issue was that nobody wanted to pay for the field house, which didn't seem like that weighty an issue at the time. But, now there's other issues. There's wars and things. Why, just going around the horn here, why did you decide to, Mary, get involved with student leadership? You're with CFSNL, you're the chair. Why did you decide to take on that responsibility?
I love this question. So I actually started like a decade ago at Grenfell. So I held various positions while I was at Grenfell campus and now here in St. John's attending the main campus. But the main reason I wanted to get involved was because of the passion and the motivation of students, because the students are the ones who are experiencing a lot of these struggles and systemic barriers, but they're still so dedicated to making a change, knowing that they might not actually experience the change they need, but they're willing to do the work so that our future generations and that our province can actually survive. Because we have continuously been saying that these are problems and we need to see them fixed, and we still feel that pushback, but the students are resilient in knowing that this is something that we cannot back down on. We need to see action from decision makers, and the fact that the students have so much passion helps me with my passion, and it's really reassuring to know that there's once I say that we are future leaders, but we're also the current leaders, because we know in the past one of the premiers said that the students have given me no choice but to freeze tuition. So I know that we have the possibility and the power to make this change so that everyone will be positively impacted. So yeah, basically, the passion, the dedication, and the students just keep me going.
And so do you find it a largely positive experience, or is it entirely stressful and you don't know what to do with yourself?
Oh my goodness, both.
Okay.
Definitely very positive with how the students are enacting with or engaging with each other. Stressful to have to continuously fight the same battles with administration, because I sometimes think they're like, oh, the turnover, we'll just wait for them to.
That's
go
true.
On. Yeah.
So it's basically like your entire, putting this on a country scale, your entire electorate leaves and you have new electorate every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So do you think that's a thing? Do you see like those wheels turning when you're negotiating with people and they're like, I just got to wait another couple months?
Yeah, there's definitely some history repeating itself within the student movement, even now with what Hadiza is saying with the visual arts program having cuts to education, cuts to program. When I was at Grenfell, we had cuts to the humanities program. So I'm seeing it again now that we're having a transition in leadership at Grenfell campus because their vice president has left and they're going through another turnover of that. So there's definitely some repeat, and maybe sometimes people in power trying to like wait it out for the student leaders to leave so that they hope that people forget the problems, but the students are committed into making sure that we don't forget where we came from, where we need to go, and that the things that are being brought up are addressed appropriately.
Nick, you've been involved in MUNSU for 300 years. What originally made you want to get involved with that, and how have you found it?
I am relatively new to it compared to Mary. But yeah, I was an engineering student. I'm still an engineering student. I got involved with the student movement because I noticed that there were pretty extreme injustices happening in my class specifically. There were, profs that weren't grading work on time. There were profs that were being extremely hard on students. I think that's a problem in engineering in general, in terms of like a lack of empathy and a lack of accommodation. But I kind of became the spokesperson for the class's issues, and that prompted me to run for engineering representative. And what I really also at this time as well, I actually lost one of my close friends, passed away about 3 years ago, and I knew that I really wanted to do something for him, to do something to make sure to put good in the world for him, because he passed away at a very young age. And so then myself and MUNSU started a petition for engineering students in terms of their work term fees, to reduce the work term fees for international students. And what I kind of really started to enjoy within the student movement is just this idea of working towards the same goal with everybody. Everybody is working towards it. Like Mary said, very selflessly, just having this group of people that are just trying to make sure that the world is better for those who come after us. The people in 10 years at Memorial, I want to see that their university experience is better than mine was, because I think we can all relate to having these issues, but making sure that they are mitigated for the next group of students who come in is so important to me. And I think it's also seeing such obvious lack of transparency with government, with the university administration, also helped me get involved, because it was easy to criticize, and it felt like there were just such severe issues that could be addressed by listening to students, and I wanted to make sure that students had a voice and were listened to.
John, Jake, you obviously saw how profitable and well-respected the media are, and decided to get involved in the news. Why did you decide to make that? Because neither of you are journalism students, right?
No, yeah. So I started at MUN as actually the Nicholas position at MUNSU in 2022. So I kind of came into the political sphere there in that way. But I also, saw the way journalism was going. Like you said, I think that we have some incredible talent of journalism in this province, and amazing writers, amazing broadcasters, amazing TV people. And the problem is that journalism has been cut. CBC's budget has been cut. We see Post Media taking over the Telegram, one indebted corporation taking over another. We see the financialization of journalism as an industry, where we're seeing shrinking newsrooms, and less and less.
And you saw all that, and you're like, "Let me add it."
And I saw that, and I said, "Let's do something about it." I wanted to join the Muse because I'm very passionate about the media. I think it's really important that we have a similar amount of journalists as we do PR professionals and communications people in the House of Assembly, because without scrutiny, there's no democracy. Without journalists being in those places and reporting on what's going on, that is how democracy functions. And it's a shame that we let it up to private industry to cover that and underfund our public broadcaster. So I do think that's why I wanted to join the Muse, not only to do journalism, but also to encourage other people who, MUN doesn't have a journalism school. Luckily, we do have one at CNA, which is fantastic. But I wanted to encourage people to get involved and to learn journalism skills. We're going to a conference in February, the NASH conference. We've rejoined up with the Canadian University Press, and we're going to be joining campus university papers from all across the country. And I think it's important that we reinvigorate the need and necessity for journalism, and I wanted to do that here at MUN. And so that's what I've been up to.
Your feelings as well, Jake?
Yeah, no, I mean, basically everything he said. But then in addition to that, I'd also say that I think because we're a student newspaper and it's not really a profit-driven enterprise, we're able to cover things that maybe doesn't typically get the same sort of front page space in a lot of different outlets. And I just say that as someone who just finished interning with the Telegram, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We've only got a few minutes left, but we've been talking about some of the things that are going on campus, some of the things affecting students. What is the next big hurdle that you see coming down the pipe that students are going to hit? We've talked about tuition still going up. The place is falling apart. Well, what is the next big thing that students are going to be concerned about in the next 5 or 6 years? What do you think, Mary?
I don't know about the next 5 or 6 years, but I know the next immediate thing is elections. Students are definitely going to make sure that our issues are election issues, so that politicians know that they have to listen to students and that they need to do something about making sure education is affordable and accessible for everyone.
How are you going to do that? Because as we've seen in lots of elections, including just down with our cousins to the south now, it's easy to point to these issues as crucial issues, but there's always the extremely large seniors issues are more important because seniors as a block are going to be voting more than you. Pipe that is going to be happening in elections. How do student issues get to the fore during an election?
That's an excellent question. One of the recommendations I have is for students to run. That's what I did in 2019, and I ran on the platform of election concerns, education concerns, so that the other candidates had to address it. So, I mean, I definitely
just forced the debate.
Yeah,
there you go.
We are very viable candidates. We are very knowledgeable. I think it's important for us to also be the ones leading and put our names out there to run and make sure that the things that we need to have addressed for everyone are adequately addressed to the best extent we can.
Nick, what's on your mind? What's coming up next?
I was also going to say the election. I think in terms of, what's going to be a student issue in a few years, I think most of the issues that we see now are going to be exacerbated. But I think in the immediate future, we're seeing a provincial election, we're seeing a federal election.
It's elections to go here very soon. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think to really make sure that we get our voices in there, we have already with the Fund MUN campaign, but also just on our own as MUNSU, we've been lobbying with politicians. We've met with Jim Dinn, the leader of the third party, and Tony Wakeham, the leader of the official opposition. And also the alternate minister of education at the time, John Hagee. And we are making sure that all parties know that you will not get students' votes. There are tens of thousands of students in this province. You will not get students' votes unless you prioritize our issues, unless you show even a little bit. We're not seeing from certain politicians, we're seeing genuine concern. From other politicians, we're not seeing any. We're not seeing any willingness, specifically with the Premier, we're not seeing any willingness to even meet with elected student leaders, the people who the student body has put their trust into and you can't even meet with. I think that having those conversations, making sure that these people know that they will not get our votes and that we have votes across this entire province, I think that that will help in terms of making sure that we have this as an election issue.
1 minute left. Gents, what's the big issue? You got 10 seconds.
I would definitely say get involved. I mean, we see Ethan Williams. He's a town councilor in Bay Bulls. Kate Cadigan's chairperson of Equal Voice. And now students, get involved and have your voice heard and take those positions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you to all my guests for being here. Tomorrow, we're live at the Breezeway talking about Social Enterprise Week 2024. So you're going to want to tune into that. Again, the message is, students, if you're out there, get involved, please. My name's Andrew Hawthorne. I'm in for Adam Walsh. Have a really great rest of your Wednesday.